Okay, so now what we're going to look at is the last step before starting our data analysis. And what we're going to look at is the quality of the sample. First video. So we're going to use, again, our survey of automobile from the home page. We're going to look here. So on this page in the data module, remember we have spreadsheet, we have consultation, and here we have a button called sample quality. So when we press on that button, what we have is a kind of a diagnostic on the quality of the data that has been collected. We have a number of diagnostic numbers. So first of all, we have the number of observations. The number of observations means the number of people who have responded to the questionnaire. It's the number of rows that we have in the spreadsheet. Okay, so remember we had 200 responses. Then we have the number of variables. We have 32 variables. Remember, the number of variables are the columns in the spreadsheets. They correspond to the questions in the questionnaire. If I have 200 responses for 32 variables, it means that in my spreadsheet I have 6,400 possible cells. Remember? There are 6,400 cells in my spreadsheet. Now, the 84% represents the number of cells that have been documented, where people have actually answered something. So that is an indication of the rate of non-response. And as you know, the non-responses is something that we have to be concerned about, because if we have a high non-response rate, it means that the quality of the data is not very good, and therefore that we have to be very careful when we analyze the data. Now you remember also that I have showed you that some questions, they introduce non-responses by their very nature. Remember, the question number 1 in the questionnaire was, do you have a car? If people answered no to that question, they go immediately to question number 31, which means that question number 2 up until question number 30 has no responses. But these no responses are called structural non-responses. They are responses because we won't ask the question to the individuals. Individuals cannot respond to those questions. They go directly to their profile. So these non-responses, they are not taken into consideration in the 84%. I hope you understand what I mean. It means that the non-response rate is only for the questions where people can actually give an answer. Now we have here a pretty little smiley face that is given by the software, by Sphinx Campus, and it gives us a little diagnostic saying, subject to the representativity of your filter, your sample is large enough for accurate estimates. Indeed, when we have a sample of 200 people, we can already do some interesting analysis. Now, other things that we see on this quality of the sample is the number or the proportion of questions that have been filled out correctly. So, and we have a distinction in terms of the nature of the variables. So remember we have closed questions, we have scales, we can have numerical questions, as well as an indication of the documentation of the observations. And these two graphs that we see here are detailed in the tables that are below. So the first table will give you a detailed explanation of how well the variables have been documented, whereas the second table gives you indication of how well observations have been documented. Okay, so these are the columns and these are the rows. And we find the same type of diagnostics: fully documented, properly documented, and poorly documented. So we want to be careful with poorly documented variables. And here we have the same with the observation. We have fully documented observation, meaning that the people have answered all the questions. Here we have 25 observations where people have documented all the variables. We have here 164 records or responses that are properly documented, and only 11 that are poorly documented, meaning when people have a lot of non-responses to some of these questions. Okay, so be sure when you have finished your survey, when you have collected all your data, please be sure to click on the sample quality button to have an idea of how good your sample actually is before going over to the data analysis.